Great. Well, thank you for being here tonight. Welcome. My name is Andy Jacob. I am the political director at 105. These beautiful faces you see on the screen with me here, these are members of the COPE committee and the elected members of our executive board. So these are the folks who really drive and dictate our political priorities and our programs and what we do, and really are the decision makers within our organization about what we are doing politically and our goals and vision for the program. So you are talking to the right people this evening. You're interviewing with the right people this evening. We really try to lean in to be a member-led organization and live those values. So you're all set on the interpretation. What we're gonna do is Mike, after this, I'm gonna hand it over to Mike. He's gonna just briefly touch on our questions. And then we'll do a round of introductions for our members. And I'll just call people out since it's hard to have popcorn style via Zoom. And then we'll have you guys do a quick introduction of yourself. And then we'll ask a series of questions and we'll just go in a round robin order. We ask everyone the same questions, but we'll switch up the order that we're asking the questions in. And then we hopefully should be good. So, and then just one thing, I'm going to use this as a point of personal privilege. What happened yesterday with the NBA was not a boycott. That was a wildcat strike. Two completely different things. That was a wildcat strike. And I think that's really, really important to make sure that differentiation is understood, because we need more workers to go on wildcat strikes to make this a better country. So I hope that is inspiring to people, but I want to make sure, I'm sick and tired of seeing people call it a boycott. It was not a boycott. It was a wildcat strike. They were holding back their labor. So now that I got that out of the way, got that out of my system, I'll hand it over to Mike to touch on our questions real quick.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Juliana, thanks for joining us. Good to see you back. Really quick, my name is Michael Howard. I'll do my intro right now. I'm a Kaiser employee. I'm affiliated, I've been with Kaiser for 12 years. I've been a steward for 11. I'm the president of this committee, and I'm an e-board member. The questions that we're gonna ask you all today, it's kind of crazy because what happened is that myself and the committee, we wrote these questions like 5 years ago, kind of tweaked them, did a little thumbs up, and we ran with it. They were designed for the candidate to tell a little story and then give us a breakdown as to what issues that they stand for and what they support and that kind of thing. What really, and some of those things were like income inequality, impact on Black and brown people, immigration, making a decent wage, housing costs, homelessness, I mean, on and on and on and on. What is really disappointing to me is that 5 years ago, when we asked these questions, 5 years later, there's no change. That really kind of makes me mad, to be honest with you. I mean, in my opinion, some of these issues that I just mentioned have gotten a little worse. So I'm hopeful that if we have to ask candidates these same questions like 5 years from now, maybe perhaps some of these things will be taken care of. Maybe we'll have to tweak the question or two. Maybe we can come up with some new ones to address some new issues. You know what I'm saying? That really, that kind of makes me mad, but that's okay. We're gonna move on. Go ahead, Andy.
All right, thanks, Mike. So we'll introduce the members of the COPE committee, and we're just saying who you are, where you work at, and how long you've been with the union. And we'll start with Ava. Oh, Ava, you're still on mute. There we go.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Eva Martínez y yo tengo 26 años trabajando en el edificio de Republic Plaza para la compañía ABM. Y en el sindicato tengo 26 años y estoy en la mesa directiva por segunda vez. Gracias.
Gracias, Eva. Magda?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Magdalena Estudillo, tengo 19 años trabajando como janitor y también como miembro de la mesa directiva.
Gracias, Magda. Yamani?
Thank you, Andy. My name is Yamano Laslase. I work at DI Airport for standard parking for 13 years, and I am board member in SL Local 105. Thank you.
Thanks, Yamani. Pedro?
Hola, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Pedro Carrillo. Soy miembro del sindicato de la Unión SIAU Local 105 desde hace 13 años. Soy miembro de la mesa directiva desde hace unos 5 años, 6 años. Bienvenidos, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Gracias, Pedro. Guadalupe?
Good evening. My name is Guadalupe Azua. I work as the janitor at the Kaiser Permanente, and I've been there for 12 years. And I'm also in the e-board. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks, Lupe. Pat?
There we go. Welcome, and thank you all for giving us this time to visit with you this evening. My name is Patricia Johnson Gibson. I'm the Vice President of SEIU Local 105 for Healthcare Division. I work at Kaiser Permanente, and I've been there for 23 years.
Thanks, Pat. Shelly?
Shelly Folks, Secretary Treasurer for the local. I worked at Kaiser Permanente, and I've been there 32 years.
Thanks, Shelly. Juliana?
Mi nombre es Juliana, tengo 6 años como janitor en la local 105 y 1 año como parte de la mesa directiva.
Gracias. All right, so I'll just call on the candidates to give a quick introduction, who you are, what seat you're running for. And then we'll move into the questions. And one thing I neglected to say earlier, and this is our super high-tech way of keeping this moving along here. You'll have about a minute to answer each question. So when you have 30 seconds left, I'm going to hold up this random yellow notepad piece of paper I have on my home desk here, and then this pink envelope will mean that your time is up. Great. So Tracy, you are on mute still, Tracy.
How long do I have for an introduction? Is it 30 seconds?
Yeah, no, these introductions are real quick because I think the questions give folks an opportunity to really, let them know why we should eat. Sure.
Okay, I'm Tracy Burnett. I'm running for House District 12. I'm a mom, engineer, entrepreneur, world-class runner, and there's 3 things I'm running on: environment, education, and equity.
Excellent.
How's that?
Great, thank you. Karen?
Yep, I'm Karen McCormick, running for House District 11, which is Longmont, Lyons, Niwot, and Allens Park. And I'm a veterinarian. I'm a mom also, and ready to roll. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Sally?
Hey everybody, Sally Bicella, running for Senate District 23, which encompasses Weld, Larimer, and Broomfield counties. I'm a first-generation American and first-generation college graduate. I am, very committed to service. I work a lot in volunteer work. I serve on 3 school district committees, and I have been a volunteer for Weld Food Bank, delivering food commodities to different schools with their backpack program, and also currently for their senior program. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Jeff?
Hey everyone, I'm State Senator Jeff Bridges, represent sort of South Metro Denver to the Arapahoe County parts of Littleton, Sheridan, Inglewood, Cherry Hills, Greenwood Village, the Cherry Creek Reservoir, which the geese are fantastic supporters, but very low voter turnout among the geese. And then I've got a little bit of Western Aurora, and some unincorporated Arapahoe County between Aurora and Denver. So super diverse district. Sheridan Public Schools is one of, it has 90% free and reduced lunch. That's the highest percentage in the metro area. And then John Elway and Peyton Manning also live in my district. So really diverse, really interesting district. And I just want to say, first of all, to everyone here, thank you so much for the work you do. I've been working alongside SEIU at the Capitol for 4 years now, and it's just incredible what you've been able to accomplish and what we have moved forward over the last 4 years, even though there's still, Michael, still a lot more work to do on that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. All right, Mike, take it away, sir.
Okay, we're going to get started with the questions. Magdalena, you're up. Question number 1, please.
Magda, you're mute.
Okay. La pregunta 1. La desigualdad de ingresos ha alcanzado niveles nunca antes visto en este país. La creación de 2 realidades, una para los ricos y la otra para el resto de nosotros. La pregunta es, ¿cómo se va a conducir al hacer frente a ese paradigma, uno que tiene un enorme impacto en los negros y de color café?
And then, Mike, if you want to go ahead and call on the candidates and kind of keep that order going, that'd be great.
Okay, that's cool. Tracy, please.
Okay, yeah, well, I think that's caused by the demise of the unions. The GI Bill was especially tough on Black and brown people, and it set up generational poverty and unsavory mortgage lending prior to the Great Recession. These are all things that really set up the income inequality. It's up substandard education, lack of access to affordable health care, food deserts, all those things. So what do I want to do? So first of all, we got to fight against the right to work efforts, get rid of the second vote in order to organize. But more importantly, that, especially for people of color, you need to be not only at the table, you need to be seen and heard. And from there, I want to help you do that. I want to put you forward and make sure you are seen and heard at the table. It's also addressing those root causes. Education, I think education, especially early childhood education, is one of the best investments we can do. And people of color have not had that opportunity. Affordable housing, healthcare. Okay, I can keep going.
You can finish your thought when you.
Okay, gun safety, pollution is especially an issue for people of color. Payday loans, public banks, those are all things, I want to work on.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. Hey, listen, I don't want to disrespect anybody, but we're kind of like family here. So we kind of go on first name basis. Is everybody okay with that? All right, okay, good. Go ahead, Karen, your turn.
All right, so I think to address this paradigm, we've got to look at all the tiny and big steps that kind of exacerbate this problem of income inequality, and it has been building up for decades, and work to bring equity at each of those steps. It's not a single fix issue, and we can't look at it that way. So that means increasing access to jobs and good paying jobs that pay actually a living wage, opening up more availability to go through apprenticeship training, joining unions, certainly increasing the minimum wage, but not just the minimum wage, really working to make it a self-sufficiency wage so that no matter where you live, you're able to afford housing and healthcare and childcare in that area. Making healthcare more accessible and more affordable because these are all, each one of these steps kind of pushes people one way or another in the income inequality paradigm. Increasing opportunities for people to actually create wealth and ways to buy their first home so that they can invest in their future in that way.
Thank you very much. Sally?
Hi, thanks for the question. So I supported Colorado Fair Tax Initiative. It was really sad that didn't go through to make it on the ballot. But I do support repealing Gallagher. I think that will help small businesses and also homeowners who are being strapped by the tax property, the inequities there between having Tabor and Gallagher conflict. I also think creating equity in education is vital. I've been working in public schools, creating equity by helping in the classrooms, by working with students in reading and math to make sure that they matriculate to the next grades and that they dream big. I think we also need to protect workers' rights, and we need to stop predatory employment practices on people of color. So.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mike. So I'll say that, first of all, on income inequality, I Occupy, and I was a proud member of Occupy. And we did it as part of a strategy at my graduate school to get food service and janitorial staff a wage increase. So the school was refusing to pay them a living wage. We occupied, we won that fight for that union. My wife, also while she was at graduate school, while she was getting her PhD, helped to create a graduate student worker union. So she is one of the founding members of a UAW. She's an auto worker as a PhD student. And so I'm incredibly proud that she helped to unionize our school there. And I'd say over the last few years in legislature, we created a union for state employees. We've got the most progressive paid sick leave policy in the entire country, which I sponsored. We cracked down on payday loans. I sponsored full day K because we know that early childhood education is key to creating opportunities later in life. You all helped to organize workers at DIA, which is incredible. I supported those efforts, and I'm so excited to see that come to fruition. In the future, we need to do more for affordable housing, minimum wage, and early childhood.
Thank you, Jeff. Yamani, you're up, buddy. Number 2, please.
Thank you, Mike. Number 2, how will you lead to make certain that no job in Colorado pays less than 15 hours? Therefore, this is an economic issue. So how can you just support or help the workers?
We'll go reverse this time. Go ahead, Jeff.
We increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It's done. Fight for 15. We got it. If we increase the minimum wage to 15, everybody working in Colorado gets 15. You don't even have to put the cards up, Andy. That's it. Let's do it. Let's fight.
All right. Okay. Sally?
I agree with Jeff. I would say I would co-sponsor legislation that would increase the minimum wage to 15. I think that passing local control for minimum wage in 2019 was a good first step, but we definitely need to co-sponsor some legislation that increases it across the board, 15. Thanks.
Nice. Karen?
Yes, I think $15 an hour actually needs to be the floor though, and not the ceiling, so that we push for 15 across the board, but then don't stop there. In many communities that won't do it. And I want to make sure that when we hit that goal that we don't stop there, because it's critical to me that everyone can afford a place to live, can afford health care, can afford childcare, can actually afford to put a little money away for their savings. And so for me, it's about getting there, but going beyond. And I just think that it's a big package, but yeah, I'm on the fight to get to 15, not only in our state, but push for it nationally as well, because we're a very movable society, and we need to make sure that that is at least our floor across this country.
Okay, thank you. Tracy?
First of all, I think you have to walk the walk. I pay my staff a minimum of $15 an hour. In fact, one of my staff is $25 an hour. $15 an hour is not a living wage in Eastern Boulder County, which is my district. And so I agree with Karen. We got to go beyond that. But yes, the $15 is a floor. I was president of the board of this Hour Center. It's a homelessness prevention center in Longmont during the Great Recession. And I saw a window into how many people are really hurting and what it takes to live in Boulder County. 2 parents, this is 5 years old, 2 parents making $15 an hour with 2 kids cannot survive in Boulder County. You have to make at least $80,000. So I'm going to fight for more than that because that's not a living wage in Boulder County. Thank you.
Okay. Miss Pat, number 3.
Take my mic off there. Thank you. So in light of the recent state violence and harassment against Black, Brown, and LGBTQ people, how will you lead to ensure that the police department is transparent and accountable to the entire community that they are entrusted to protect and serve? And I'm going to start off with Karen.
Thank you, Pat. Well, I love that the activism and the way the legislature moved on this this movement so quickly with Senate Bill 217, I believe it was. So yay you. Also, I would like to hold up our own local peacekeeping police department here in Longmont as a model for other communities. 40 years ago, we had a violence against 2 Latino men here that sparked just an outpouring of community concern and created El Comité. And since then, the hiring practices have changed. The communication between the police department and the community has changed, and we have a model for restorative justice program here in Longmont where 90% of the cases that go into the restorative justice program have been referred by the police department, and this helps keep people that are facing a potential criminal charge outside of the conventional criminal justice system. And so I think more police departments should, and I know our police department is working nationally and statewide to help model this, but I want to be part of the voices that say there's a better way to do this, and here's one way how it can be done.
Thank you. You going to call the next one, Ms. Pat?
Yes, Jeff, go for it.
You bet. Thank you very much. So great question. And as Karen mentioned, we passed 217. We were the first state in the country to respond to the call of the most recent protests, and we did it. We passed the bill. It had almost unanimous support in the legislature. I'm proud to have been an original sponsor of that bill. And since that bill has passed, unfortunately, Karen was lifting up her local police department. The Greenwood Village Police Department is a fantastic department, but the Greenwood Village City Council decided to shield their officers from one of the most important parts of that bill, which was the removal of qualified immunity. And we know from experts across the country that removing qualified immunity helps to create individual accountability and reduce police brutality. And Greenwood Village saying that they're not going to subject their police to that $25,000 personal liability is completely absurd. And so we have been leading protests. We have been working with musicians to ban or to boycott Fiddler's Green, which is inside Greenwood Village. And Leslie Herod and I have been working very closely with the Greenwood Village City Council to try and get them to just say they're going to enforce 217. They're going to decide whether an officer is behaving good or bad faith on the merits of each case. And very recently, in fact, this week, it's come to a point where they're not going to say that. And so watch out for the Denver Post, hopefully this weekend, and we're going to be taking them to task because we have to do something about this, and we can't let city councils like Greenwood Village spoil the bunch.
Thank you so much. Sally.
Thank you, Pat. So I just wanted to say, yeah, Jeff, that was amazing with 217. I think that's a great, step forward in, keeping integrity within our law enforcement. I also think too that we need to invest more in community and social services in regards to mental health and substance calls, because we can't expect our law enforcement to be able to handle all that. They're not trained for that. So, and then the third thing is I think we need accurate data collection. I've been talking to, you know, district attorneys in my county, I'm sorry, in my district. So in 3 counties, Larimer, Weld, and Broomfield, district attorneys' offices, and they all agreed that they would support data collection because we need that. We need mandatory reporting from the counties to know what's happening with these cases. So thanks.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Tracy.
Hi. I'm not going to repeat what Karen said because we actually share the same, we both share Longmont as part of our district. And so yes, Longmont has done a lot of work in the past. But I think we have to make sure that this new law is enforced, and that I suspect there'll be tweaks in the future. So I'm looking forward to that. I think, you know, we need to go from like, you know, a warrior training of police to a guardian training, and, you know, change the culture of the way police do their policing. You know, Leslie Harrod had a really interesting, she talked about a pilot model for non-criminal 911 calls that refers EMTs and mental health professionals to the call instead of police. And in fact, the people who call the most on that are the police. So to me, this is a new, you know, new idea that we can take it forward. Also, you know, Mark Doherty and Joe Pele, our district attorney, Boulder County district attorney and sheriff, you know, really had some good ideas. They're very progressive in this area. And so reaching out to them as well as the local Longmont police is what I want to continue to do.
All right, thank you, folks. Up next will be Pedro.
Gracias. Mi pregunta va a ser, ¿hay la necesidad de proteger los sistemas de migración legal que ya existen y de agilizarlos? Por ejemplo, actualmente hay miles de personas en el proceso para legalizar su situación migratoria por medio de algún familiar. El proceso puede durar hasta 20 años de principio a fin. ¿Usted se compromete a legislar un proyecto de ley para agilizar los procesos migratorios? ¿Cuál es su postura en general sobre temas migratorios?
Karen?
Yes, I commit to making the process faster. I'm all about efficiency. Just in my background as a veterinarian and running my own business, I know that to do the most positive things possible, you have to be efficient in your work. So also leading on this issue by pushing our federal representatives to enact comprehensive immigration reform. I've been on my representative Ken Buck about this since I ran against him 2 years ago. And we just absolutely need to keep pushing until we get there federally, to make sure that there is a path to citizenship that's efficient and effective for all that want it, that keeps families together, that brings people out of the shadows and not living in fear. It makes me ill to my stomach that people are in this country living in fear from this country. And to work on that backload of cases. If we need more immigration court systems or judges or whatever we need to backfill that need so that we have a more efficient process. Statewide, I want to make sure that ICE stays in their lane too. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Karen. Jeff?
Thank you. And I just want to say, Andy, I love that it's a red envelope. I just noticed it's an envelope that you're using for the stop. So yeah, we have worked really hard to try and do what we can at a state level on immigration. The fact is we have a broken Washington. And so we are doing everything that we can, given that there's nothing that's happening at a federal level, to try and incorporate these Coloradans, these hardworking Coloradans that are family members, that are taxpayers from a government perspective, to make sure that they have the protections that every human being deserves. And so we have ensured that there is access to driver's licenses for folks regardless of immigration status. We need to make sure that we keep that. We've made it so that you can't arrest folks at courthouses. We've said sheriffs can't hold people an extra amount of time to wait for ICE to arrive. That's not happening in every case, and so we need to figure out why that's not happening and what else we need to do to make sure that that happens. And that a lot of that may not be legislative. Some of that may be just cranking up the pressure in doing what we can to increase the pressure on our federal representatives, our federal delegation, and increase the pressure on elected officials here in Colorado, especially sheriffs, to follow the law and not hand folks over to ICE.
Thank you, Jeff. Tracy?
Yeah, this is that I have, I've talked to a lot of, well, let me say, Longmont is about 22% Latina. And so I have reached out to the local community leaders.
Father,
and
can you stop a little bit, because we have two. Sorry for interrupt, but both of the interpreters start to talk at the same time.
¿Todo bien? Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
yes, you can continue.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, so I've been partnering with local community leaders on this, and I echo, absolutely we have to have a much more efficient path to citizenship. I'm all for that. But locally, I think it's, there shouldn't be a citizenship test for healthcare eligibility or admission to Colorado colleges. And I'm actually working with one community leader on this idea of eliminating the requirement to show documentation for licensing home daycare providers. I mean, there's a critical need right now, especially because people are afraid to put their kids in big, daycare centers. But this is another opportunity for for local communities to get more people back to work and help people here and now. So that's one idea.
Thank you, Tracy. Sally?
Thank you, Mike. So I think that we should pass legislation on the state level that actually protects, all people regardless of immigration status. I think it's, vitally important that everyone has access to resources and social services regardless of immigration status. We've seen that was a problem with the COVID relief packages. I think that's unacceptable. There's only so much that the state can do in regards to changing immigration laws themselves. That is a federal issue, but I do think that it needs to be more efficient, and we need to make it easy for people to have that status, to create that status coming here. Because I know my family, people come here because they want to expand their opportunities, and we need to make that easy.
Okay, thank you, folks. Juliana, you're next.
Mi pregunta es, creemos que el equilibrio de poder en Colorado está más organizado para las personas ricas y de negocios. ¿Ustedes qué piensan sobre eso?
There's another section to number 5, Juliana.
Es ¿sí, no? ¿Sí es esa, no? Es que miren, creemos que el equilibrio de poder en Colorado se encuentra demasiado en interés organizada en representar a ricos y de negocios y personas de la comunidad. ¿Es correcta?
Yes, that's correct. And keep going. There's another line down there. All right, I'll finish it off. It says, what measures will you take and lead to ensure that more power and voice returns to the rest of the population that you are constitutionally bound to represent? And we'll go with
Oh,
Miss.
yo tengo otra.
All right, we'll go with Sally.
Thanks, Mike. I think that we need to continue to make voting accessible to everyone, and it's easy. And I think that's one way to make that create equity. But I also think too that as a representative, we need to listen to all voices, and that's something that I have been doing. Reaching out to voters. And the feedback that I've been getting is that it doesn't matter what party they're with or what their socioeconomic backgrounds are. They just want to be heard and respected. And so that I think is vital to representing a district is listening to all voices. Thank you.
Okay, good. Jeff.
Well, first of all, I think it is critically important as an elected official that in campaigns, we spend time talking with the people we represent, and not just talking at them, but listening to them. And that is, I think, the difference in our campaign and why it is that I've outperformed on elections, because we work really hard to make sure people feel valued and heard. And that is the most important thing you can do in an election. And it's the most important thing you can do to make sure that you govern well. Having knocked on thousands and thousands of doors personally, I've knocked in every single neighborhood in my House district. And the fact that I can't knock doors this year is so incredibly frustrating and sad to me. So we're making phone calls. We're making thousands and thousands of phone calls. We have more voter contacts in this campaign than any other campaign in the state, as far as I know, although I know the other campaigns in the line are fantastic. But we are on the phones every day with a huge number of folks, volunteers, paid staff, not giving them a pitch. We ask people not to read a script. We ask them to ask questions and listen and really learn what it is that's on folks' minds. That's number one. Number two, part of the reason those folks have so much power is money in politics. And I have fought from my first day in the legislature to create campaign finance reform. We passed one of the most comprehensive campaign finance reform bills 2 years ago. Me and Mike Foote were the prime sponsors of that. We need more legislation to crack down on campaign finance. And I've never been endorsed by the Colorado Association for Commerce and Industry. Only you guys.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Tracy.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, this is just the way I work is just, I think it's so important to talk to the people who are really doing what I call the real work. I've managed large international development projects, but when I did that, I would always talk to the people who I call were really doing the work. And so this is what I've been building, that community right now of connections of people who are doing the work. The Latino community, teachers, and also like-minded groups who value the same values we have. Together, Colorado, Calor, many, many different things. I want to tighten my connections with labor, so I'm just going to say that up front. But I was on a 10-year plan to end homelessness in Boulder County Advisory Board, and I testified in multiple times for affordable housing in very NIMBY, very emotional testimonies. So I'm willing to stand up for that. I also just asked one of our mayors to move a ballot box that was right next to a police station. That just happened last week. I asked them to move that because it just is not the right thing in this environment. So I'm looking to continue those connections and fight for you guys all down at the state capitol.
Thank you, Tracy. Karen?
Yeah, I'm in this run to represent my neighbors and working people. I'm not in this for power or glory or fame. And I am all about building relationships. So staying in conversation with my neighbors and the people that hopefully will elect me to have the honor of representing them is pretty much who I am, to be accessible to regular people and to encourage regular people to engage in the process. I, for one, jumped off the sidelines into the fray 4 years ago. And I want to share that story with my neighbors, saying that democracy is us participating. And the more that do, the healthier it will be. I also am continuing to push for federal campaign finance reform. Until we have public financing of all campaigns, there's going to be this power struggle with the money pushing people that are susceptible to listening to money. And practically speaking, I just plan to have regular open house type meetings with people to provide those listening opportunities on an ongoing basis. Always open door kind of attitude.
Thank you, Karen. Question number 6. Lupe, you're on.
Okay, what is one issue you're willing to fall your sword for?
And we'll start with Tracy.
Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit because to me it's a duh that it's reproductive rights and gun safety because I'm in a safe Democratic district. But I will fall on my sword for pollution because, for one thing, my son nearly died of an asthma attack when he was a toddler. And I learned through that whole process how people of color, especially who don't have access to good health care and don't have, and live in more polluted environments, they are especially impacted by that. So I will fall on my sword for air pollution and yeah, that's it. Air pollution and environment.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Jeff.
So I am the only legislator with a Master's of Divinity degree. So out of all 100 in the building. So I take values and personal responsibility incredibly seriously. You know, it was a really interreligious, really diverse school. And so it taught me how to bring folks together around shared values. And that's the job in the legislature, is finding that common ground, finding a way to get things done. So I am always willing to lose my seat on something that will make a difference in people's lives. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I was the prime sponsor of the most progressive, most comprehensive paid sick leave bill in the entire country. And we managed to pass it in a bipartisan way because we found that common ground, we moved it forward. But if we had to pass it in just a partisan vote, I will do that, I will make that happen. Where I'm not gonna go though, is I don't tilt at windmills. I like to win. I like to make sure that what we are doing at the legislature delivers results for the people that we're fighting for. And so taking votes just so that I feel good about, you know, having forced other people to vote no, or I feel good about having forced a veto, that's not what it's about for me. It's about actually changing lives. And so I'm at the Capitol to make a difference in folks' lives. And I feel like over the last 4 years, we've done a lot of really good work in that direction in partnership with SEIU. And we have found ways in almost every case to take what it is that SEIU wants to get done and get it through the legislature in a way that actually accomplishes what it is that we set out to do for people.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Sally?
Thank you. Yeah, I thought this question was very broad. I don't have just one thing. You know, my whole campaign is about bringing people together and listening, and finding common ground and bringing all stakeholders to the table, because I really think that that's the only way you're going to create innovative policy. But to answer your question, you know, it's not just one thing for me. It's several things. I can tell you one of them is collective bargaining. I grew up with a single mother who worked several jobs. She didn't have health care and she didn't have a house, or she couldn't even afford an apartment until she was able to get a union job. That changed our lives. She was able to afford an apartment, we had health care. So I know that collective bargaining works and expands opportunities for people. That's one of my main goals, is to make sure that all Coloradans thrive. And the others are environmental and also gun safety. So sorry, not just one.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, my value that's in my DNA that is going to carry me through everything is integrity, which my dad, a 30-year Navy guy, said that he defined it as doing the right thing when nobody's watching. And but what I will fall on my sword for is reproductive rights and justice for the LGBTQ community. I have an eldest child who identifies as non-binary, assigned female at birth. And so those two kind of overlap for me. And I will go to my grave fighting for that and protecting the right for people to make their own decisions in healthcare.
Thank you, Karen. All right. Lupe, number 7, go right ahead.
Why are you the leader that we're looking for?
We're going to start with Karen.
All right. I guess I would say I hope to be one of many leaders that are willing to sit down and listen and collaborate and work to solve problems to move people forward. In my veterinary career, running my own business, I led by being the hardest worker on the team. So I lead by example and working just as hard as those that I'm working with and for. And I bring that life experience to the table. And more importantly, and I talked about this a lot when I crazily ran for Congress, I think that one big ingredient that sometimes is missing when you're in a heated discussion or listening to all the voices at the table. And one of my goals is to make sure that I am at least one person that is bringing compassion to the table. Compassion for whomever it is that we are looking to help, making sure that I'm one of those people that are looking to see, are we hurting anybody with this policy? And so to me, compassion should be in every policy decision that is discussed, in every bill that is passed, and I will make sure to be a voice for compassion.
Nice, thank you. Sally?
Thanks, Mike. So as I said, I was raised by a single mother, and she was a union member for 25 years. So that's one reason I think I could bring that perspective and really be an advocate for labor rights. And you know, when we started out, I've been committed to service before I decided to run for office. And so switching my campaign to a community-focused campaign during COVID was easy. So we've become a resource in my district, not only for food security, but also for PPE. In March, I started reaching out to businesses and schools to get PPE to my area hospitals. And I continue through a network of amazing volunteers, these seamstresses that have come to my aid. They make these masks that I deliver to Children's Hospital and hospitals in Greeley to provide the essential workers with the DIY masks, ones that don't actually work with COVID patients, but every other healthcare worker. And then, and also call to action, if anybody is a seamstress, I need some people to make masks for children. That's what we're in need of. First, I'm delivering masks to Children's Hospital, like I said, but also to schools. And children's masks are in demand right now. So, and I've also wrote a letter to the editor calling out my Weld County commissioners for accountability on supporting the mask mandate. Because we've got, you know, like I said, schools opening, you know, we've got business owners that are just crying for that support. So that's just really important to me that we put public health safety and we take care of our communities first over politics. So thank you.
Thank you. Tracy?
Well, I grew up in a rural working class town. I mean, this is the people I grew up with, farmers, people who worked at the local toy factory. But I also grew up with a family that represents the entire political spectrum, from a Tea Party, card-carrying, MAGA, evangelical Christian to a socialist and everything in between. And we learned I mean, we learn to work, you know, to come together in common ground. People want to be heard and they want to be understood. And from there, if you understand people, then you can go beyond and get something done. And I'd have to say, I have a demonstrated ability to get things done. I'm going to give you one example. I became president of this homelessness prevention board during the Great Recession. There were liberals to libertarians on that board, but we came together to help people get back on their feet and self-sufficient. We helped over 16,000 families stay in their homes during that time. And after that, at the end of the Great Recession, I helped raise over almost $5 million to do a family resource center right here to help continue that good work and do soup to nuts, one-stop shop, everything people need to get back on their feet. So I have a demonstrated ability to get things done, and this is why I'm running. I'm not doing it for my ego. I'm doing it because I'm passionate about getting things done and helping people and being a voice for people who don't have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff.
Thank you. So I'd say first and most importantly, my cell phone number is the most accessible cell phone number in the state. So it's on my website, it's on every piece of literature we send out. If you want to talk to me, you can give me a call anytime, please not after 10, but any other time would be great. Send me a text message. You can reach me anytime, and I'm willing to fight with you. I'm willing to work with you. And I think I have a proven history of getting the job done. And it's not just because I pick small fights, right? Every bill I've ever passed has had bipartisan support. But we passed full day K. We passed it unanimously through the Senate. We passed the most comprehensive data privacy protection bill in the country. We passed election reform, one of the most comprehensive election reform bills in the country. And we passed one of the most comprehensive and progressive earned sick leave policies, paid sick leave policies in the entire country. These were big fights. These were huge fights with all sorts of different interest groups on all different sides. You guys have always been with me, which I deeply appreciate, which is one of the ways I know I'm on the right side of something. If you're with me, generally I know that I'm doing the right thing on these. But we build those coalitions, we work with folks on the other side, and we find a way to actually get the policy done. Like I said before, for me, the job is not about proposing great ideas that have no shot of passing. For me, the job is about helping people. People are suffering, and right now especially, people are in dire need of a functioning government that actually delivers results for them. That's what I've done over the last 4 years, and working with SEIU, it's what I'll do over the next 4. I'm in the Senate now, so 4, yeah.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. All right, Ava, number 8, please.
No siempre vamos a estar de acuerdo sobre los diversos temas, pero se comprometen a tener una política de puerta abierta con nosotros. Se comprometen a reunirse con nosotros dentro de los 30 días de ser elegidos.
Tracy?
Yes, I will commit to having an open door policy with you, and I've already put you on my calendar for 1 week after the election to contact you guys, if endorsed.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, open door, absolutely. I look to you as a resource. I'm not always going to know what your issues are or where the fight needs to be, so I need you. So absolutely, my door is open, and I would love to meet with you as soon as possible after the election. Whether you endorse me or not, I want to meet with you because it's important. It's important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sally?
Yes, I agree with everything Karen just said. You know, we look to you as a resource because, you know, I'm not an expert in everything and that you'll be needing or looking to legislation for. And so I will definitely look for that guidance from you. And my door will always be open. If there's an issue that comes up, please don't hesitate to contact me. My number is out there on my website and always available. So absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you. And Jeff?
Yes. I will meet with you within 30 days, but I'm going to spend some time with my wife first. Campaigns are the whole family, and she has been amazing at supporting me every time I've run for office, whether a primary, a vacancy, a general. So I am going to spend some time with my wife first. But after that, yes, absolutely. I'm happy to meet with the SEIU folks anytime. And I'll also say, because you've been so helpful, we have such a competitive race. This is one of the top 2 Senate holds that we just have to win in order to maintain Democratic control of the Senate. We know what Republican control of the Senate's like. I remember that. It was just 2 years ago. We don't want that. So I've got to win this race. Rachel has got to win her race. And we need to expand that majority with other candidates that are running for Senate who I really think can win, Sally. And so we need that support. And of course, when we get that support, we want to say thank you. So at the very least, I will be coming by within 30 days to say thank you very much for helping us keep the Senate blue.
Appreciate that. Hey, listen, we have the last 3 questions are kind of like our rapid fire. So what I'd like to do is have all the candidates unmute yourself. And this is the order that I want you all to do the yes or no. I want Tracy, Karen, Sally, and then Jeff. Sorry, Jeff, ladies before gentlemen. Rapid fire, 3 quick questions. All I need is a yes, no. We're gonna go right down the line and we're good, okay? Everybody say it? All right, here we go. The first one. Would you support legislation to make it easier for people to organize unions or other types of worker organizations?
Yes. I'll meet with you regardless.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, 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 yes.
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 Okay.
Easy.
Will you protect workers' rights to organize and collective bargain? Tracy?
Yes.
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 Nice. And then the last one. Will you support active or soon to be active organizing campaigns?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. You guys did good. I'm proud of you.
Can I say one thing? I misspoke. I misunderstood the question about will you be at, will I meet with you? And I thought it had to be, I had to meet with you within 30 days if I'm endorsed. So I will meet with you anytime. I just want to make that clear. I'm so sorry I made that mistake.
Oh, you're fine. You did fine. Go ahead, Mr. Andy. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Great. Well, again, thank you all for spending your evening with us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the thoughtful answers that you gave. There's a couple of more steps left in the process. I think a lot of you have already signed on to the Working People's Platform. And then because we're an organization about accountability and public support of the campaigns that we work on, I'll be circling back on our home care campaign. That's very important to us. It's one of our top priorities to have some public support put out around that. And then also, I've been doing these endorsement interviews for 8 years, and this is the very first time that we started on time and we ended on time. So this is
great crew.
Efficiency.
So thank you all. Have a good evening. We're gonna boot you out of here because we got another set of 4 candidates coming in. Hopefully we're on the same start on time and end on time with these folks as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. And then we'll move over to you folks. There are candidates joining us this evening. Kathy.
Hey, thank you very much for having us all here tonight, and thanks for letting us be part of your evening. My name is Kathy Kipp. I served on a local school board here in Fort Collins in Larimer County, the Poudre School District, for 7 years, from 2011 till when I joined the legislature in 2019. So it was there that I really developed a passion for education and came to understand the real enormous issues that we were facing in our state budget in terms of the constitutional constraints in trying to address, trying to fund education and everything else that's so important to us in our state. So that's why I decided I want to join the legislature, and I have been there for 2 years now, and I serve on the Education Committee and in the Energy and Environment Committee.
Great, thank you. Carl.
Sure. So Carl Hanlon, I am running for Senate District 8, which is kind of the northwest quarter of the state. When you drive through the Eisenhower tunnels, you're in SD 8. And so it is Summit, Summit Grand, Jackson, which is where I grew up, the Walden area, if anybody knows where that is, Routt, Moffett, Rio Blanco, and Garfield counties. So big Senate district. I grew up on a working cattle ranch in Jackson County, north of Walden. And it's kind of interesting because we got there because my great-grandfather was an Irish immigrant, union organizer in Pittsburgh. My grandfather was union in the Union Pacific. My dad was a shop steward for Greyhound in the 50s before he moved full-time onto the ranch. So there's this, even though I came off a ranch, I ended up, going to law school and been practicing water and municipal law. There's this long history in my family of being just part of and believing in the labor movement. And I really view so much of where I got to because of the strides that those folks that had gone before me made possible for me to have. Growing up, frankly, fairly poor on the Wyoming border in Colorado, without the benefit of those things like good benefits and good wages and things like that when my dad was working off the ranch, and my mom too, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am. So moving forward for me out here in SD8, one of the big issues is the transition out in the Craig area with the coal-fired power plant being shut down and the coal mines shutting down and good benefited union jobs going away, and how do we really actually address that? So happy to be here. Happy to talk to you guys. Looking forward to the questions.
Great, thank you. David.
All right, my name is David Ortiz, and I am running for the Colorado State House here in House District 38, which is Littleton in the western parts of Centennial. And the short answer to why I'm running for office is to empower others the way others have empowered me, whether that's through the example of their life, like my grandfather who was infantry in World War II, my dad who was Air Force Academy grad of '79, or my mom who migrated from Mexico when she was only 15 years old. So it was really those values around tenacity, around enduring, around the importance of the community, and around selfless service that have marked my entire lifetime of service. My first job after graduating college was resettling evacuees. After Hurricane Katrina, first resettling the migrant community, I was a Spanish-speaking case manager with them, and then working with the rest coming out of New Orleans. And if it wasn't for the team pulling together, funding from FEMA and Red Cross, the business community in Houston offering, free training and prioritized hiring, we wouldn't have been able to get the job done. I was a combat aviator in the Army. It's a clear example of a team pulling together from all walks of life, all ethnicities, and putting the mission first. It impacted my own life. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, I survived a catastrophic crash, which left me paralyzed from the waist down. And if it wasn't for the medevac, the pilots, the medics, the army of surgeons, physical therapists, and occupational therapists, I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't have regained my independence, and I wouldn't be here fighting for the privilege to represent the people of HD 38. So it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to talk to all of you. I'm excited to support y'all in your mission and what you're doing, and to fight for some of the most important issues that are impacting us, whether we're talking about affordable, attainable housing, healthcare, mass transportation, among many others, racial justice and equity, everything that's going on right now. So.
Great, thank you. Stephen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Andy and everyone else. It's wonderful to see you all. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. It's also good to see my colleague, Rep. Kip, and hopefully my future colleague, Rep. Ortiz. And Carl, it's great to see you as well. It's wonderful that we get to be here and have these moments right now to express what's going on and share what's happening. Obviously, we are at a crisis in so many different fronts right now. I am Stephen Woodrow, HD6. That's some of the greatest parts of Denver. We're looking at East Wash Park, Bonnie Brae, Hilltop, Cherry Creek, Lowry, all the way out to Windsor Gardens, where we have some of our most tenacious and most active voters. I started getting involved in politics. I grew up outside of Detroit, Michigan. My father passed away when I was an infant. If it wasn't for the social safety net and my mother having a strong union job, teaching public school for 27 years, I would not be here today. And that's the simple truth. My father's younger brother, my Uncle Danny, moved out here to the great state of Colorado in 1973 and met my Aunt Mindy, his wife, the first day of law school. And they practiced law out here for close to 3 decades. I would have moved out here sooner. My sister moved out here in 1999. I came out eventually with my family to start a family in 2011. CU Boulder rejected my application for law school, so I ended up living in Chicago for 9 years. But I practiced consumer law, consumer protection, suing mostly banks, consumer financial issues, telemarketers, and debt collectors. So I look at my service down at the Capitol as an extension of that work, fighting for people against large, powerful corporate interests. I've been at the Capitol since February 5th. It's been a wonderful experience. It's awesome to work with the people down there. I have the esteemed honor, I get to sit next to Rep. Kip for the session, although now we have a acrylic partition between us. But it's great to be here. It's great to talk about the issues. And I just thank you for having me, and thank you for putting this on.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining this evening. We'll move into our question period, and I forgot to say this earlier, so I apologize. We like folks to, about a minute per question. We're doing, a very high-tech system of letting you know when that time is up. I hold up this yellow piece of paper when you've got about 30 seconds, when half your time is done, and then this pink envelope when your time is done. Just grabbing what I got on my home desk here. So that's our method. But I am going to hand it off to Mike. There we go, Steven. I'm going to hand it off to Mike to run the rest of the show this evening.
All right, thank you, Andy. David, appreciate your service to the country, buddy. Thank you very much. Veteran, got you. All right, Magdalena, you ready to go? Question number 1, please.
Listo. Okay. La desigualdad de ingresos ha alcanzado niveles nunca antes visto en este país. La creación de 2 realidades, una para los ricos y otra para el resto de nosotros. La pregunta es, ¿cómo se va a conducir al hacer frente a este paradigma, uno que tiene un enorme impacto en los negros y de color café?
Kathy, you can go first, please.
You are still muted.
I am so sorry. Would you mind repeating part of the question? I get really distracted I've never been on one of these calls with a wonderful translation, and I was a little bit distracted. I apologize.
No problem.
You're fine. Income inequality has reached levels never before seen in this country.
Got it. Sorry about that. Okay. Income inequality. Yeah. So here's my big issue, and I know, it might not seem obvious, but what I think we need to address income inequality is to address the underlying way that we do our revenue and budgeting in the state of Colorado, because what we are doing now badly affects the poorest people that we have in our communities, right? When we have a flat income tax, and then we have, Tabor, Gallagher, all these things that are part of our constitutional constraints, it means that our wealthy people are not paying their fair share of taxes. And you say, well, it's a flat tax, but the flat tax means that if you look at the overall tax burden, wealthy people pay less. When you look at your property taxes and your sales taxes and all that kind of stuff, what we need to do is, what I worked on a lot this summer, at the beginning of the summer, was trying to get 271 on the ballot, which would have created a graduated income tax. I really think that we need to do that, but we also need to repeal Tabor. We need to create a system, because a lot of the things that our state government supports help the most marginalized in our communities, right? We have programs that, like, even just simple things like education. Education is the great equalizer. It's something that creates opportunity. And without being able to properly fund education, we're going to keep people in the stratosphere of different classifications of wealth.
Thank you, Kathy. Carl?
Yep. Got it. Yeah, no, sorry about that. This is only like my 4th Zoom call today, so I apologize. For all of you, it's the end of a long day too, I'm sure. So you're getting me at my punch drunk-iest. So I think there's a couple of things. There's both public side things we can do and private side things we can do. And I think I need to open by saying in my district, it is 92.8% white. But that having been said, the income inequality that we see, particularly Garfield County is the primary location where we have a large Latino community that supports the tourist economy in up into Aspen and the building industry here in Eagle County. So there's both supply side, there's both, I shouldn't say supply side, there is public side things like changes in tax policy that Kathy was talking about that we have, I think at the local level been fighting for a very long time, like changes to Tabor or changes to Gallagher that can help enormously on being able to fund programs. But on the flip side, also on the private side out here, we need to be a lot more focused on things like encouraging collective bargaining and unions that we just don't have in SD8. So there are things that we can do there legislatively, I think, as well as just as leaders in the community to try to bring it home.
Thank you, Carl. David?
Great. Yeah, I'm going to try and do this real quick to keep it within the time frame. So I think the biggest thing that we can do in fighting against income inequality and supporting brown and black lives is supporting union organizations. That is the vehicle through which, in our history, you've seen that we fight for livable wages and for good benefits. Outside of that, we also need to, I think, attack and work to create greater equity and two of the biggest costs to any working family, which is healthcare and affordable, attainable housing. If we create greater opportunities for affordable, attainable housing within our communities, then we will, cut down one of the greatest costs for working families. And you do that at all levels, which is why we're endorsed by federal and city council members. You need to work as a team together, but also with healthcare. I know firsthand how critical it is to have access to healthcare. I wouldn't be in front of y'all without that. We need to fight to make healthcare more transparent and more accountable, to make choices. And honestly, if I had it my way, we would have a true public option that competes with private insurance. That way you can still have the choice of your healthcare. You can respect and support the benefits through ERISA trust that labor unions have fought so hard for, while still giving it a choice and option for those that don't have access to that. And education is key, and equity too. We need to stop the school to prison pipeline and create a teaching force that looks like the kids that they teach, and make sure that we are creating opportunities for livable wages for teachers. So.
Thank you, David. Stephen, please.
Thank you so much. Wow, I agree with what everyone said. David, I would also suggest that we end the White House to prison pipeline while we're at it. In order to get what we need total tax reform. We have to blow up Tabor. We have to close loopholes. It's devastating that we couldn't get progressive taxation on the ballot. That really came down to a bad decision by the Supreme Court with respect to how we gathered signatures. It was a key year to try to get this done, but we'll keep at it because we really can't afford not to. We have to encourage unions. We have to support efforts when workers want to come and band together. We have to be there vocally and show up. We also need to support other efforts like raising the minimum wage and improving education funding. We are almost dead last or reportedly dead last in teacher pay. And, ultimately, that's going to have an effect on our ability to educate our students. So we have to do better. These, are just some of the ways that obviously, we can talk about, but it's a pressing issue of our time, and, we need all hands on deck. So thanks.
Thank you, guys. Yamani, number 2, please.
Thank you, Mike. My question is, how will you lead to make certain that no jobs in Colorado pays less than 15 hours an hour? So this is an economic case, and you know that the employees are just going down in order to lead their life. Everything is expensive. How do you handle it, and how do you support when you are elected?
We're going to go in reverse order. So Stephen, you go first.
Yeah, great. This is an excellent question, and it touches upon what I was, just saying before. In terms of fighting for 15, there's a couple of things that we have to do. We actually have to fight for 25. I've been an attorney for 15 years, and I can tell you I've never had a negotiation land where either party has began. All right, if we start at 15, our chances of actually getting to 15 is going to be very difficult. So let's aim for the stars, land on the moon. There's nothing more American than an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. And that's what we're asking for here. And we haven't had adjustments to the minimum wage in well over a decade. So we have fallen way behind where we need to be. I think we all know the statistic. If it had kept up since the 70s, we'd be looking at something in the $21, $22 an hour range. And how am I going to fight for that at the Capitol? Being very vocal and supportive and supporting all efforts, at all levels of government when these initiatives arise and when we can push legislation through. At a certain point, what it takes is political will. It takes standing up to lobbyists who come in and say, you're going to destroy every business in the state. They're all going to run. That's not true. We've seen over and over again that when people have money to spend, that increases consumer demand and every business does better. So that's what I would do. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. David.
Got to echo what my future peer, Stephen, said. Agree with him 110%. We need to put our money where our mouth is and support legislation that's going to make sure that we reach that $15 an hour goal. I'm going to adopt what Stephen said, and he's dead on. You have to start negotiating high because you rarely land on whatever you start with. So we need to make sure that we are strong-armed in our negotiating tactics and make sure we support and land eventually on $15 an hour or higher. And I'm willing to use and leverage my own personal life experience to make sure that happens as an elected at the state capitol. Anyone that tells you that they can't do it is lying, okay? So I was an advocate and lobbyist for veterans. I was a contract lobbyist for a nonprofit veteran organization that could not pay me a lot of money. I made $800 a month. But I eventually had to hire someone to help me. You better believe that I put my money where my mouth is and paid them $15 an hour because that's the floor. So any small business owner, anyone says that they can't afford to pay someone $15 an hour or more, bull. And I'm saying that from my own personal experience, and I'm willing to leverage that personal experience.
Thanks, David. Carl?
Absolutely. I mean, I echo what hopefully my future colleagues all said. I would say this, though, in terms of starting higher, is that $15 an hour up here is not a living wage. And that is one of the real problems in our mountain communities. And I think the recent sort of facing the fact with COVID that the population that has been working for less than that and trying to put it together up here is moving away. They're moving to other areas of the country. They're not sticking around. And now businesses who have taken advantage of that are really feeling it. And so I think that we, one, working on the legislation at the state capitol and making those adjustments, but two, recognizing that there is differences up here in my district that are significant in terms of what it costs to be here. And so, like I said, frankly, 15 is not anywhere close to a living wage up here. And what we need to be focused on, and what I want to focus on, is creating that economy through both legislation, carrot, stick, that we can get to a living wage in the communities that I represent. And that's absolutely critical.
Thank you, Carl. Well said. Kathy?
Well, thank you for the question. Now, what we did last year in the State House is we passed a local minimum wage job. So that says that, areas, for instance, the mountains or areas where it costs more to live could pass their own minimum wage. I believe it's a statewide issue, though. I think it's in the Constitution right now, and that we're going to be leveling up a little bit. But we do need to do better. I mean, I really thought it was sad during the whole COVID crisis. The $600 a week is $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, right? So, and I had a lot of local employers complaining, well, my people won't come back to work because they're not going to get paid as much money. It's like, well, then you should pay them more, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. We need to pay people living wages. I've been trying to keep tabs on some of this unfortunate political stuff going on this week. And there was a video the other night where a woman was like working 3 jobs. And it's like, well, wait, why aren't we addressing the woman working 3 jobs instead of the part about, the kid in school? I mean, how is that acceptable that somebody has to work 3 jobs to make a living? It's just not.
Thank you, Kathy. Miss Pat, number 3.
Thank you. In light of recent state violence and harassment against Black, Brown, and LGBTQ people, how will you lead to ensure that the police department is transparent and accountable to the entire community that they have entrusted to protect and to serve? And we're going to start off with Carl.
All right. I think that SB 217 was a great start. And I occupy a really an interesting space because part of what my private life is that I represent a lot of municipalities up here in the mountains along the I-70 corridor, Glenwood Springs, Silverthorne, areas like that. So I have had the privilege and the opportunity to really talk about what changes like 217 mean to local governments and actually have those discussions with local police departments. And what it is to me, and I have the privilege of working with a couple of really actually fairly good departments that understand that this is about doing a good job. And I think we have a real opportunity to take what we started with 217, but more importantly is reimagine what public safety looks like. And one of the things that we need to do is focus on things like multifaceted task force that are responding. You know what? Somebody showing up with a gun is not a good interaction with a mental health patient, and it never is going to be, or with somebody who is homeless, or somebody who is in crisis for a lot of other reasons. And we have a real opportunity in this moment to take advantage of that and reimagine what that means to our communities. And I'm actually starting to see that happen in the communities that I represent. And we're starting to have those conversations. I want to take that conversation back down to Denver with that really understanding at the local level of how we can make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. David?
All right, I really appreciate this question. I think the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we're fighting to get representation elected into all offices, whether we're talking about sheriffs, whether we're talking about DAs, legislators. We need representation. That's why representation matters. So we need to start there. The next thing we need to do is work with organizations like CBWPA, Colorado Black Women for Political Action, and others to make sure that we're not just doing the work under the Gold Dome, but also doing work in community as well. And honestly, I'm for this push on, the call is to defund police, but really the push is that if I'm going through a mental health care crisis, I don't need someone with a gun showing up. I need a counselor. I need a psychologist. If I'm homeless, I don't need someone with a gun showing up. I need a social worker who has access to other resources that might be able to help me out and offer real help. So that's kind of where I want to shift the focus. And I'm willing again to use my personal experience and leverage that. As someone that served in the military, as a combat aviator, we owned that bullet. We owned that rocket. And every one of our engagements is recorded. And you better believe that we have to own up to that. And even to get to that point, we have to develop the situation and provide 100% proof of ID. And here's the difference. This is America, not a combat zone. If they can't even meet the floor bare minimum of what we have to meet in a combat zone, we have a problem. I'm willing to leverage my experience against that and make sure not only are we getting better representation with brown and black bodies in the Colorado State House, but also making sure that we work together.
Thank you so much, David. Stephen?
Yes, my goodness, David, you stole my answer. No, seriously, SB 217, it was, a historic first in the nation. We're still the only legislature to get something done on qualified immunity and get something done in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and others. But Carl's absolutely right. This is a good start. We have more work to do. We have more work to do on 217. There's dates in there that can definitely be stepped up because folks can't afford to wait. When we see bodies on the ground, when we see kids handcuffed, it's just too much. David, you're absolutely right. We have to demilitarize our police forces and get back to some semblance and some mix of community policing. And that means same police in a neighborhood who know and build relationships with the people there. We also have to address gun violence and the proliferation of guns. These problems intersect when we have 300 million plus guns in America. Police officers, law enforcement are able to claim that any cell phone looked like a weapon, that anyone who was reaching for anything, it could have been a weapon because guns are everywhere. So we have to look at these problems holistically and tackle all of them because lives are at stake. This is truly a matter of life and death, and we can't afford to see another life lost.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And last but not least, Kathy.
Thank you. So, I agree with my colleagues. One of the things that we tried to get into, well, we would have liked, I should have said, to get into 217. It's not for lack of trying, it was for lack of money. So we gave authority to the Attorney General to be able to investigate those situations which he thought deserved investigations. But what we really felt like we needed to do, and we just didn't have the money for, because everything costs money, right? Again, is to have an independent investigations panel to make sure that we have an independent group and that the police aren't trying to oversee themselves when it comes to this situation. Because, if any of us are trying to oversee our own actions without some kind of external verification, I think that has to get called into question. Anybody, anytime. So I agree with my colleagues. We also need to look at how we are funding and make sure that we are also emphasizing the social services, the human services that will hopefully reduce the need for additional policing. But I think we're sort of all on the same wavelength here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pat. Appreciate that. Pedro, you're up, buddy.
Ok, eso. Ok, aparte de legislar una reforma migratoria integral, o CIR por sus siglas en inglés, hay la necesidad de proteger los sistemas de migración legal que ya existen y de organizarlos. Por ejemplo, actualmente hay miles de personas en proceso para legalizar su situación migratoria por medio de algún familiar. El proceso puede durar hasta 20 años de principio a fin. Usted se compromete a legislar un proyecto de ley para agilizar los procesos migratorios y, si es elegido, ¿cómo es que su oficina ayudará a sus constituyentes migrantes?
And we'll start with Kathy, please.
Well, thank you very much again. So, no, it's a great question. I think, a lot of the time we have to depend on our federal folks to lead on these issues, because that's where a lot of these things occur. However, we have done several things over the last couple of years in the State House to try and make life more bearable. But I think we need to use our voices as state legislators to encourage our colleagues at the federal level to have this federal reform. Anything that we can do at the state level. Last year, we passed a bill that said that we have to have state inspections of all facilities, like the detainment facility that they've had down in Aurora, and the horrendous conditions they've had down there. The year before, we passed a bill to say that no, essentially the local police don't have to cooperate with the other folk, the ICE folks. And it's just being a human being and having empathy and caring for people.
Thank you, Kathy. Carl, you're next.
Thank you. This is probably one of those issues that is most near and dear to my heart. And I'll tell you a little story, and I may run over on time. But so my daughter graduated from Roaring Fork High School, as did her best friend. They were co-valedictorians. Zoe could make choices about any place she wanted to go to college, and her best friend couldn't because she was a DACA student. And that, it is every day for us here in the Roaring Fork Valley that every one of us has those stories. The failure of the federal government to take action on any number of things is, in my mind, criminal, and this is certainly one of them. But working around that, there are things we can do at the state level. Removing the restriction about legal status to provide aid, federally funded or state funded or locally funded aid. We've been doing workarounds to that since that was passed in the mid-2000s, where you as a local government donate to the local nonprofit and you just don't follow up to make sure that people are getting the help they need. And so there are still things we can do at the state level, because I unfortunately don't feel like we're going to be making very much progress at the federal level. That having been said, it's an issue that I talk to when I talk to our congressional delegation. I talk to him every time. I was on a call with Nagus today. I talked to Bennett about it regularly. I even talked to Tipton about it, for what that's worth, or Corey Gardner, because you just keep at them because it's such a critical issue here. So we do what we can, but that's all we can do.
Thank you, Carl. David?
All right, this has been an issue that I've been working on my whole life. Obviously, my mom migrated from Mexico when she was 15. And there's a dangerous narrative that has always existed when it comes to the migrant, whether we're talking about Italians, Irish, depends on the era, right? And that we come here to steal jobs, we come here to commit crimes. And I know that that's not the truth. I can stack up all 3 generations of military service contrary to that fact. So whether I was marching on the streets in the early 2000s, fighting for immigration reform, or recently when I was fighting to get in-state tuition for those here on a special immigrant visa, which we did get passed, or whether it's trying to make sure that we stop the deportation of veterans and repatriate those that were deported. I've been in this fight. I will continue to stay in this fight. On the local level, I know we can abolish ICE from all public offices, to include courthouses, to include schools, to include the Colorado State Capitol. We need to be abolishing ICE in every public area that we can. I don't know if you watched the documentary that recently came out on Netflix, Immigration Nation. The one thing that I was the most taken aback by was how militarized ICE has become. And Pedro, me encanta tu camisa. I love your shirt, Pedro, because that is exactly what it's becoming. It's becoming militarized. Yeah, it's becoming militarized now, to where it's not about just trying to prioritize those that commit violent crimes or that are human traffickers. It's about rounding up and deporting working families. So I will do everything I can always, and I always have been, to be fighting against that on every level, whether it's working with our federal counterparts or here at the state level.
Thanks, David. Stephen?
Thanks. Everyone's right. The system's an absolute mess. First, we have to shut down ICE and close these facilities and let these people go. Especially in COVID, but even without COVID, this is a humanitarian crisis. It's perpetuated by some very sick people at the federal level, who I think use this in a very cynical way to gin up support from their base. They play with people's lives. They've separated families. All of it will be a stain on the record of the last 4 years when we look back at what was done. I fully support Dreamers. I've employed a Dreamer. I saw the fear in her eyes when Trump was elected, knowing full well what that would mean for her. And I can tell you, also as an attorney, that pro bono I have repped, someone seeking who was born here, not born here, but brought here as a baby, seeking asylum to live with her family, and understanding the process, the paperwork, the hoops, the amount of time and energy and attorney's time that goes into processing a single case, just to have it fall into a black hole. You can't get a hold of anyone on the phone. You can't get a hearing officer. They literally tell you this might take a couple years to get back to you. So we have a messed up system. It is horribly backlogged. I think the original question, part of it was, will you support a lot to streamline this? And my answer is emphatically yes. Thank you for bringing up this important topic.
Yes, sir. Juliana is gonna ask the next question. Go right ahead, Juliana.
Mi pregunta es, creemos que el equilibrio de poder en Colorado se encuentra en demasiado interés y organizado que representa a la comunidad rica y de negocios. ¿Qué medidas, la pregunta es, qué medidas van a tomar, cómo se conducirán para asegurar que más poder y la voz represente que representa a la población que constitucionalmente
And we're going to start with Stephen.
Yes,
Sorry,
thank you.
Steve.
No problem. Thank you so much. Absolutely. This is the reason I ran. This is the reason I represent HT6. As a class action attorney who sues banks and financial institutions, I've sued the NRA. I make a living going up against very large, powerful corporate interests, the very same firms who hire the lobbyists who have so much sway and influence down at the Capitol. It is an extension of what I do professionally. In talking a little inside baseball, I think what we need to do is be very careful and thoughtful about who we elect to leadership this upcoming session. So much depends on who staffs what committees. And for the past several terms, the business committee, the finance committee have had several folks on there who are very business friendly. Okay, and what that has meant is a logjam when consumer friendly bills come up, when things such as affordable housing, to make eviction processes more fair, to really almost anything consumer oriented gets routed to those committees. And so it's what we have a decision to make is who staffs those committees, who's in leadership, and who's the most likely to give these bills a fair shot. And I commit to giving them the most advocacy that I possibly can.
All right, thank you, sir. David?
Great, Steve. Thanks for saying about who we elect, because that leads into my first point. The thing that I want to see happen the most is campaign finance reform. I think being able to change how we elect the people that represent us is one way to take away power, to mitigate power from the wealthiest, biggest interests here in this state and across the country. So I abhor when people are allowed to dump their own wealth and their own money and essentially buy a seat. I'm seeing that from my opponent right now. He's dumped $14,000 of his own money into this race. Lucky for me, I work much harder than he does. I mean, if you're Latino, you have to work 3 or 4 times harder anyways. I'm out fundraising him 4 to 1. But we need to stop that ability for individuals to buy seats and buy races. I think the next thing that we can do too is change to a ranked voting system so that your vote actually represents and reflects who you want leading you. So no one can use that excuse that you're throwing your vote away and supporting someone that might have more progressive ideals or values. So I think we need to move to a ranked voting system here in the state. And then my work as a legislator or future legislator around creating equity in education and economic opportunities are 2 of the biggest areas where we need to make advances. And an anecdotal example of what I use is when I'm fundraising, I get a list from one of my future white male peers, and I'm able to raise $1,300 off that list. I get a list from a woman of color who is going to be a future peer. I'm only able to raise $200 or $300 because our networks are different. That is an anecdotal example of why we need to create greater equity economically and in education. So.
Nice. Okay, thank you, sir. Carl.
Thanks. I would echo what both Stephen and David said. I think those are highly accurate as to what's going on. And I'm actually in a race with somebody who has sat on the JVC since 2010. And I will tell you that the campaign finance piece, given that every lobbyist in Denver is pouring money into his campaign, creates a sense of inequity and makes it just that much harder for us to make those changes. And also somebody who just as blatantly said, I am pro-business, and that's just the way it is. I think out here, one of the biggest ways, and that's where I feel like sometimes I'm so far out in the hinterlands, but out here, really changing the economy from oil and gas to something different, and really having the vision to be able to do that is going to break down a lot of those issues that we struggle with out here. My firm, we've done 3 or 4 or 5 cases on Wage Claim Act cases against the oil and gas industry. It has created such a perception that that's the only answer, that until we break that down out in the western part of the state, we're not going to make any forward progress to convince people that there is a better path than just being beholden to the largest corporation that comes in and tells you that this is the way it's going to be. So strengthening those other opportunities, strengthening unions in SD8, and strengthening education, which is one of those areas that is just really being torn apart in rural Colorado. We may be at 3.5 days a week in this next budget cycle for rural Colorado. That there's just no way to get out of, there's no way to improve, there's no way to fight back if that's what you're stuck with. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kathy, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So thank you to all of my colleagues, future colleagues, hopefully, for their takes on this. I have another take, an additional take. So I worked very hard on getting 271 on the ballot this year. I've been involved in every initiative since the Great Recession to try and get some kind of TABOR reform done in our state. And you know what the problem we have is? We have a problem right now where if you have $1 million or more, you have ballot access because you can pay people to go around and get petition signatures, to print your petitions, to do everything you need to do in order to get an initiative on the ballot. The Colorado Supreme Court said, well, you don't get to do that because it's in the Constitution that you can't do that. And I'm like, because, you know, the remote, not entirely physical way that we had set it up to do. And so it's like, you know what, if they are going to interpret the law that way, I want to change the law. I would like to come up with a referred measure. I believe it would have to be a referred measure to get something on the ballot that says, yes, we can have, it is 2020, we can have citizen ballot initiatives that don't have barriers of cost, such as even the cost of just printing the petitions, to be able to get what the people want on the ballot. All the bad stuff is getting on the ballot because the Koch brothers are funding it, okay? So we need to have the opportunity to get the good stuff on the ballot, because if we'd gotten our graduated income tax on the ballot, we would have been so much better positioned for this next budget year, which is going to be incredibly just a bloodbath financially.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Kathy. Next up, Lupe.
Yes. What is the one issue you are willing to fall your sword for?
And we'll start that question with Kathy, please.
Sorry. You know, honestly, there aren't a lot of issues that I wouldn't just die on the sword for. I'm very fortunate to live in a district that's pretty well aligned with my values. And, you know, I'm, you know, 56 going on 57 years old. I'm not in this for the long haul. I am not looking to seek some higher office at some point. I just want to do a good job and do the right thing where I am. So we need to defend social justice. We need to make sure every kid gets a good education and has opportunity. We need to make sure that we fix the funding system in our state. We need to buy down the IDD waiting list. We need to support working people. We need to support unions. I mean, you know, women's reproductive rights, you name it. It's sort of, you know, okay, I have to admit, I was born in Berkeley, California, so I was probably just born to be a liberal, but that's kind of where it is for me. I'm gonna vote my values.
All right, thank you. Carl?
So if I'm actually elected in SD8, I will be the first Democrat elected in this part of the state to a Senate seat pretty much ever. So it's really not a matter of which issue am I going to fall on the sword on, it's how many issues am I going to be run into with a sword. Because it's going to be you know, one of the tough things for me is that I'm going to have to, you know, if I win this election, it'll be by 500 votes, and I will have to walk in with what is a very progressive agenda and prove to a very conservative part of the state that it works for them. And so it is 4 years of literally falling on my sword every day over all of these issues that we've been talking about because they're so important, but proving that it's important to rural America and rural Colorado to embrace those issues and move forward on them. And so those are, I'm willing to die on my sword for all of those because we have to move rural America forward. And this is one of the footholds to do it as an SD8. And if we ignore it and if we leave it out there and we don't try to do it, then we've lost again. And I just can't allow that to happen.
Thank you, Carl. David?
All right. I mean, I agree with everything that everyone is saying, and there's lots of issues. I'm medically retired out of the military. I'm not here for a career. I was recruited to run. It wasn't a personal ambition. But if I can go down in Colorado history as getting rid of Tabor and Gallagher, that would be the sword that I would be most proud to fall on because that impacts everything, whether we're talking about funding para, K through 12 education, higher education, all the services that we provide here across the state, whether we're talking about access to mental health care, revising and revamping how we police and shifting some of those resources to social workers and psychologists, that will alleviate so many problems. So that is going to be, I'm going to say, getting rid of or amending Gallagher and Tabor.
Thank you, David. All right, Stephen.
I mean, all of these progressive causes are super important, and they all intersect. And it's an agenda that we need to advance and push forward. And if I wasn't fortunate enough to be in a district where 24,000 people voted in the Democratic primary and under 4,000 voted in the GOP primary, I'd be a pincushion. But I don't. I have the privilege and the ability to stand up and speak truth to power. And I work really hard to get folks like Carl and some others elected to pad the numbers in the Senate, to give him cover when the tough bills come up, because I am one of those folks who's going to be running a sword right through them. And one of them is gun violence. We just saw this week a 17-year-old child travel from his home state to Wisconsin and execute people at a protest. We have lost our minds, and we need to get it back. And this is the most dangerous issue under the dome. Okay, it is fraught with recalls and emotion and invective, and it is, it cuts very deep in a culture war right now that is inflamed. So it is with that political reality that we go in and say enough is enough. All right, we're not losing more people to gun violence. Not if we can help it. We lost 2 gun bills this past session to COVID, lost and reported stolen firearms and safe storage. We have to bring those back, and then we have to look at least a 3-day waiting period. We're still the state where someone was able to publicly broadcast online that they were going to land in Colorado, purchase a firearm, and attack children. And we had to shut down all these schools along the Front Range. Our memories are short, but we can't let something that traumatic just fall by the wayside. So if there's one issue that I'm willing to get booted out of office over, is for a vote on gun violence. And so that's where we are.
Thank you, sir. Continue on there, Miss Lupe.
Why are you the leader we're looking for?
Stephen, you go first this time, buddy.
It's certainly not my looks. Mom said I had a face for radio, but I believe in this. I don't look at this as a partnership. I view myself as of you. We snuck one, past enemy lines, and we're going to have a lot of fun seeing what we can do together. I grew up in a union household. My first job, I was a bag boy at Kroger, courtesy clerk. Sorry, that was my official title. Clearing out carts in a Michigan winter, smashing my fingers together. My mom, again, public school teacher, 27 years. People in my family understanding the importance of organized labor. And so, when you need someone, when you need an advocate, I've already enjoyed myself down at the Capitol. I got to serve on state affairs. I got to stand up proudly for workers' rights. I got to vote down right to work and right to work for teachers. And I wasn't quiet about it. So this is something that I really enjoy. It's a passion. It is an honor to serve all of you. My door and my number are always open. Feel free to call on me. I work for you and serve you. I take it pretty seriously. Thanks again.
All right, Stephen. David.
All right. This question always makes me nervous because I feel like, any leader worth their salt is going to be one that approaches the job with humility, that doesn't think that they're the end all be all or the only answer, as this president tries to claim all the time. But I'll tell you what I do bring to the table, and you all get to decide whether I'm the leader that's right for y'all or not. I'm a lifelong public servant, whether I was resettling evacuees, or whether I was a combat aviator in the military, or continued advocating and lobbying for veterans and the disabled at the state capitol. I am a lifelong public servant. That's something you get with me. And with that, you get a tenacious fighter. You don't go from being a hard-charging aviator, runner, dancing salsa, merengue, bachata, to barely being able to sit up in bed under your own power after surviving a life-changing injury, and rebuilding your life without being a tenacious fighter. You have to be a tenacious fighter. That's something that you get with me, but tempered with the fact that I know how to bring people together. I know how to be a bridge builder. As an advocate and lobbyist at the state capitol, every single one of my main bills had bipartisan support. And I think our greatest work is done when we work together. And I think that is a motto or a mantra that unions exemplify, in my opinion. So, you know, I hope you all decide that I'm the type of leader that you're looking for, but y'all will be the judge of that. And that kind of falls in line with empowering others. It's y'all's choice. And I look forward to earning your support every day.
Thanks, David. Carl?
You know, different stories, but I think we all have those stories of how we got where we're at and how important labor was in our backgrounds and what that meant to us. I still remember that I still won't drink a Coors beer, right? Because in my household, that was something you just didn't do ever after what happened at Montfort, right? So, but what's different for me is that I have to think about being a leader in a place that I have to convince people that this is the right path. And it's one that David spoke to about, I'm not the end all be all. I need to be that person that works hard every day, that demonstrates every single day that I care and that what we believe in matters and that it matters for everyone and that everyone matters to me. And if I do that day in and day out, and that's what I've done through my entire career, then hopefully I earn your support, I earn the votes I need, but more importantly, I make things better for the people that live in my district and the people that live in Colorado. That's what it means to lead, is to get the job done for the people that matter.
Thank you, Carl. Kathy?
Well, I guess I never really gave you my backstory. So I had twins in 1998, so they're 22 years old now. And I became that volunteer mom. I volunteered for everything. You know, I don't know if you know, but elected school board members don't get paid anything. And but that was one of the things I took into my school board service, and even before then, is I just made sure I listened to everybody. I take the time. I am one of those people who said, when I got on the school board, we have to have monthly listening sessions so we can hear what people say. I carry that into this job. You know, pandemic, what were we going to do? I've been holding driveway hours out in the front of my house all summer, 2 to 3 times a week, just to hear people. I have Zoom hours for people who aren't comfortable being close. I just think that you have to listen to people. You also have to be smart. You have to ask good questions, and you have to have a good work ethic, because this is really hard work. I mean, I don't know how people like Stephen have a second job and do this, because I spend all of my time on this job because it is so important and it's such an honor to serve. So as these folks said, I guess you guys are the final arbiters if you think we're the people that you're looking for. But, you know, I think you have a bunch of people here who have really good values and just want to do the right thing. And I think that's what good citizen legislators are.
Thank you. All right, Eva, number 8, please.
No siempre vamos a estar de acuerdo sobre los diversos temas, pero si compromete a tener una política de puertas abiertas con nosotros, se comprometen a reunirse con nosotros dentro de los 30 días de ser elegidos.
Kathy, you can go first.
Absolutely, anytime. Like I said, I meet with everybody. The only time I make an exception to that is, and that's only temporarily, is when people have, when people are adult bullies. I don't meet with bullies. I won't put up with that kind of stuff. But absolutely, anybody who wants to come and talk with me to listen, I will listen to anybody about any issue, and I will ask you questions, and I will try and learn and understand your perspective.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
I'll keep it short. Yeah, I know, like, absolutely. I mean, that's the gig, and that's why I'm here, and that's absolutely how I would want to handle it.
Okay, thank you, sir. David?
Yeah, I'll keep it short with a little addendum. Yes and yes, with the added addendum that I would love also to meet with you after the session is over. We have this thing in the military called an AAR, which is like an after action review. So I would love to be able to meet with y'all after, I mean, obviously during, but after, just to get your rating on how you felt that I did and how we can work better together. So.
Nice. All right, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to meet with you all shortly after the election, assuming everything goes to plan, and start formulating, and get more information about what the strategy is looking next session. We got to do the work early. We got to get all of our ducks lined up in a row. If we don't see eye to eye on something, that's going to be really weird. So we'll have to figure that one out. But yeah, I'm on call, so just don't abuse privileges. 3 a.m. is a little late for me, but I'm here to serve. So let me know, and we'll work it out.
All right, sir. Thank you. The next session is going to be called our rapid fire section. I'm going to ask 3 questions. All I need from the candidates is a yes or a no. I would like to have all the candidates unmute yourself, and this is the order we're going to go in. We're going to go Kathy, Carl, David, and Stephen. So when I hit these questions, we'll yes or no in that order. Is that okay? All right, here we go. All right. Would you support legislation to make it easier for people to organize unions or other type of worker organizations?
Yes.
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 Will you protect workers' rights to organize and collective bargaining?
Yes.
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 And finally, will you support active or soon to be active organizing campaigns?
Absolutely. Yes.
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 Well, I tell you what, you guys did good tonight. I appreciate you. Andy, take it over.
Unmute myself there. Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you all very much for spending the evening with us. Really appreciated your answers, the thoughtful approach you took to this, and again, spending the time with us. There's a couple of other steps. I think all of you have signed on to the Working People's platform already. Really appreciate that. That means a lot to our members. We we put our name on people. We want them to put their name on us. It's really important to us about that. And then I'll also be following up to ask some folks to do some public support of our home care campaign. Again, we want folks to not only tell us in these settings that they're behind us, but to put it out there publicly that they're behind us, and addressing the issues that are in the home care workforce right now are vitally important to our organization, and frankly, just to the state. And so I'll be following up, but again, really appreciate you all spending the time with us this evening and those thoughtful answers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.